trained to obey and obey quickly. So if I were in a group and I said, get down, if you were in a group of military, they would hit the deck in a second. The soldier will respond quickly. That's how it should be about God. When God says something to us, we should respond quickly and obediently and with faith and not question why. What am I going to get out of this? Why do you want me to do this? Just do it.
That's the voice of Rachel Coggins, retired Army chaplain and author of the book, Gateway to Iraq, A Chaplain's Story. Assigned to a base called the Gateway, she welcomed military members entering the war zones of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait, and then bid them goodbye when it was time to return stateside. During this podcast, Coggins will share her thoughts on practical faith, especially how faith is practiced in military settings and how she as chaplain represented faith to soldiers. She also has some interesting thoughts on what we can learn from our military personnel about faith. I'm Cecil Taylor of Cecil Taylor Ministries, teaching Christians how to live a 7-day practical faith. Everything I do, whether blogs, books, or videos, or this podcast, is about taking our faith from Sunday into the rest of the week, applying scripture and faith to life situations. I'm also interested in children and parents as I've written a book entitled Unison Parenting, the comprehensive guide to navigating Christian parenthood with one voice. You can find out more about the book and a special online sale in the podcast notes, as well as much more about my overall ministry and how it can help you. In the Practical Faith Academy podcast, I add other voices with other life experiences to understand how they put faith into practice. Please subscribe to my podcast according to your listening platform's instructions. I welcome your comments and your sharing of this podcast with others. Rachel Coggins and I got to know each other better at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention last year. I wish we could have recorded our fascinating conversation about her days as a chaplain at Gateway Base, but we'll have to make do with whatever we say today. Rachel, it's a delight to see you as we meet again on the Practical Faith Academy podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I'd like to start off with my question on faith. When I say 7-day practical faith, what does that mean to you?
Relationship. In one word, I think that's what it was saying. It's about a relationship. You don't have a good relationship with your spouse by seeing them once a week or by not speaking to them first thing in the morning and throughout the day and in the evening. So relationship is paramount. Definitely relationship with God. And carrying up, building the relationship, nurturing the relationship, and all the good Bible ways, say your prayers and read your Bible, grow every day. Learned that as a kid, but it still holds true to stay in the Word and keep your relationship growing and going with a very living God, Jesus Christ.
Well, and that's what I like about what you've said. Yes, pray. Yes, read the Bible. But those are not check boxes, right? Those are ultimately because you're trying to build relationship. So
exactly. Thank you.
Well, let's get into your days as a chaplain. And I know you served for quite some time.
25 years.
Yeah. Wow. And your husband, too. He was in Air Force.
Yes.
Yes.
He was an active duty Air Force chaplain. We met in seminary. We were both working on our master's degree, and he got out, and his daddy was an Air Force chaplain. So he was very career oriented. He wanted to be a chaplain in the military. And we got married. We were working together, and he got his first job as a pastor. And then he got his job as a chaplain, and the best job I could get with my Master of Divinity was secretary at the Greater Boston Baptist Association,
Oh.
which I did with gusto as much as I could. I did a lot more than just secretarial work. Nonetheless, it was not really meeting my calling, and God planned that I should meet an Army Reserve female chaplain on my base at Hanscom Air Force Base. She was just walking because that's where their headquarters were. The Army Reserves headquarters was on the Air Force Base.
Okay.
And I met her and I started talking to her, and she said, Rachel, I have a husband, I have a child, I have a life, but I can fulfill my calling as a minister in a professional way by being in the Army Reserves. And I said, I want to do that. And she said, well, we can help you. So if you don't mind, I'll tell the rest of the story. It's a fun story. So I met her supervisor, Harry Hallman. I still remember his name. And he said, Rachel, we'd love to help you. We need more women in the chaplaincy. We'll do whatever it takes to get you in. Just let us know. And I said, oh, I don't know. I really don't want to leave my husband for 3 months and go away to the chaplain school. So I don't know. So I went home that evening. And the next day, and this is no kidding, the next day my husband got an assignment to Galena, Alaska without me, a remote assignment. And I had said to Harry, if my husband ever goes on a remote, I will consider it. The very next day, he got an assignment for a remote. So I called Harry up and said, you're not going to believe this, but my husband is going to leave me for 1 year. I have nothing else to do. Let's work on this. So
How about that?
it was
That's
a
a
lot
God thing.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, totally. The whole thing of me being a chaplain was a God thing. And it was very hard to be ordained as a woman. I was Southern Baptist, okay? And we just happened to be in Boston. And there was a church there in Cambridge that was full of postdoctoral students from all over the South. So very brainy, wonderful young people. And I needed to be ordained. So I asked them, would you consider ordaining me so that I can be a chaplain? And they said yes. And that was just like a needle in the haystack to find a church, a Southern Baptist church that would ordain me in the Southern Baptist Convention. Again, totally God, right place, right time, and in God's timing. So I fully give God credit for my career as an Army chaplain. And I'll just add that I did make it 25 years. I made it a full career, and that's totally God's blessing also.
Wow, what a great story! And then your husband had to go away, so you'd have your opportunity. That's really interesting. But God moves in mysterious ways. God moves
Absolutely.
people in mysterious ways.
I do believe it.
Yes. So tell us a little bit. What is the role of a chaplain, and is there any difference in how you approach chaplaincy when it's in the military versus, you have chaplains in hospitals and that sort of thing?
Yeah. It is different and it is unique. It is time honored and historically honored. Well, George Washington had a chaplain, and we've been in the service for as long as the American military, and probably further. Well, it was further. So in the chaplains, it's like being a pastor. It is like, I can say that simply, but it's more than being just a pastor, because I am your chaplain is assigned to your unit. So I am your chaplain, whether you like me, whether you love me, or whether you can't stand it, or whatever. I am still your chaplain. And whether you are a believer or a non-believer, a nice person or a not nice, I'm still your chaplain. And I took that very seriously. So when I would do rounds and do walks, I'm looking for, how are you doing, buddy? Are things okay? Doesn't matter if you agree with me. I'm concerned about you because I am your chaplain. And chaplains have authority that other people, I was not only a chaplain, I was an officer. So I retired at the rank of lieutenant colonel, and that is a respected rank. All the ranks are respected. So most of the enlist, if I went walking, the enlisted had to salute me, and they always call me ma'am. So there was definitely a sense of respect that was given to me. And when one of my jobs was, in my job description, was to advise the command on the morale of the unit. So I was always had my ear to the ground. How are people doing? What are they like? What are they upset about? And it was my job to counsel the commander and try to help him to see what was going on in his unit. So that was I had the ear of the commander, so that was highly respected. It was a great job. I loved it.
Wow, I had no idea how integral a chaplain is to the whole organization. To have a chaplain is very valuable in an organization that's very focused on performance and rigor and this kind of thing. And you kind of need somebody who could kind of float through that in a way and look at it from a different perspective.
Absolutely, yes. We were part of the command staff. So whenever a commander had a meeting, I was part of that meeting. And I don't know how it is today, but they would often let me start each meeting with a prayer. I started on some of my deployments, we would have a briefing on something like what we're doing right now. And I would start with a prayer. I had a very succinct little word for the day, but I always got to give a word of encouragement. And there's a thing about chaplains. Some people would almost consider us a lucky foot, but a lucky rabbit's foot. And so when they went out on deployments or difficult situations, or like doing a jump from the plane, they loved having the chaplain along with them. And it brought a very real sense of peace. And, for myself, I do have a sense of peace. I know that God is with me. I know that God is protecting me. And that sort of radiates, And if I know that God is protecting me in that plane, then the guy at the end of the hall, end of the row rather, may feel that also.
Let me take a quick break from the conversation to tell you about my new Advent video study, The Misfits of Christmas. I wanted a fresh, new way to present the Advent story. In The Misfits of Christmas, I show what we can learn from both our favorite secular holiday misfits and the misfits we find throughout the biblical Christmas narrative. You can learn more about it by watching a trailer video or even viewing the first video lesson for free on YouTube. The links are in the show notes. Talk it over soon with your small group or adult Sunday school class because Advent is coming. Take it from me as a longtime teacher. It's hard to find good Advent curriculum. My goal is to provide such good curriculum to you on the Cecil Taylor Ministries online store. The link is also found in the show notes. I'm talking with Rachel Coggins on the Practical Faith Academy podcast. Now I feel like I need to say Lieutenant Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Coggins instead. But anyway, so glad you're with us today. In your work at Gateway Base, did you find the stress harder for the soldiers who were transitioning into Iraq, because it was kind of that base had soldiers going both directions? So did you find the stress harder for soldiers entering Iraq or exiting Iraq?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. The answer is simple. Going into Iraq, they were much more anxious about going into the war zone than coming out and going home. However, what I think you're alluding to is the stress that one would feel after they're home and disconnected from their military people. And that is a very real stress. And I could talk a lot about that, but I don't think that's our focus. But how about I read you a little poem that might tell you a little bit about that?
Okay.
This is a poem I wrote at Launch to a Hospital. I was also there, and it's about a wounded Marine, and he's laying in the hospital bed, okay, wounded. And it said, the title of it is, I'd rather be there than here. It's hot and dry, got sand in my eye, but I'd rather be there than here. That's the hospital. The food is lousy and never enough. We drank warm water from a thin metal cup, but I'd rather be there than here. Farmer by day, insurgent by night. Why don't they come on out and fight? Just when I thought that I could sit down, in comes another martyr round. But I'd rather be there than here. There's nothing to say that hasn't been said. Watched all the movies and books are all read. Bored out of my mind and scared but won't whine. 'Cause I'm a Marine and I'm doing my time. And I'd rather be there than here.
Wow.
It's a point that says, he's out of Iraq. He was in a very dangerous situation, but he's in a hospital bed, and he's bemoaning the fact that he's not out there with his other Marines in the fight. And that was a thing that I found very interesting, and I had to work with people on making the transition out of the military. And we still are working with that. I work with a program called Veterans Treatment Court, and people get very attached, I could say, to the military mindset, and it's transitioning is difficult. But at the gateway, which is the way you asked the question, they just left their family. They're going into the battle. They know they might not come back, and there were some breakdowns. That's a lot of there's several stories in my book where they're just cannot cope with this feeling that they were having. They were feeling this huge emotion, and when I'd get them in my office and sit them down for a minute, the emotion was that they might start crying, and a soldier doesn't do that.
Right.
Not in front of the other guys, but he would do it in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a sweet and healing moment to allow them to just say, hey, buddy, you're okay. You're fine. Have a cry here. And then you're going to be better. You're going to be fine.
You have said that you represented both mom and God in your unique role as a female chaplain. Talk about that a little bit.
So many of the Marines and the warfighter, at least, were very young. And these Marines would come in, they're 18, 19. And my goodness, they just left their mother. They just left home. So being a female, I could tell that a lot of them were very comfortable. Just the story that I just told you, they could cry for me as long as I closed the doors, right? They would just gravitate. You just could kind of feel that, it's like, oh, you're like my aunt or my grandmother. I mean, I was old enough to be some of their grandmothers, and lots of them were raised by their grandmothers. And it was just that kind of warm comfort of a friendly face. And certainly the cross that I wore was a powerful image of God is here for you.
Well, and speaking of that, let me ask, what is something people should learn from the faith journeys of military personnel?
Well, I thought that's a great question. And there are so many scriptures that call us a warrior, and talked about the armor of God, and talk about the battlefield is in the mind, and of course, David and all the Old Testament exploits of literal battles. The soldier is a very disciplined person, and we learn discipline. And, you ask, what is a 7-day faith journey? It has a lot to do with discipline, getting up early and starting the day off with your prayers and your Bible study. Self-control is one of the gifts of the Spirit. And we need to control our actions and our words. A soldier learns to do that. He might get mad at so-and-so, but he would never say anything to his officer. He would salute and say, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. And so these are disciplines, and we learn to be a team. I loved running cadence. I don't know if you realize when people are marching, they are so close together that when you put out your left foot, you're putting it where the person in front of you's left foot was. And then you put your right foot out. And if everybody doesn't go exactly the same, 1, 2, 3, 4, if you don't go exactly the same and move your legs, your feet the same distance, you will trip. You'll trip everybody in the whole formation. So we train like that. We go out in runs and they sing cadence. I just loved singing cadence. They sing in with the a 4-beat with a rhythm so that you can run to that rhythm. So soldiers learn to do that. We need to run together as Christians. We need to support each other. When his foot moves, your foot needs to come down. And we need to walk together. We need to watch another wonderful illustration of the soldier. Oh, I could just go on and on about illustration. But they say the thing about, I've got your back, or I've got your six, as they say. So if you watch a group of special forces guys going into a building, there'll be 4 of them, and everybody's looking a different direction, right? So somebody's watching the back while someone is watching the front. Well, in the armor of God, every piece is covered except the back. So that's where you have to have someone to watch your six. Okay, you have to have someone to watch your backside. And that's a military term too.
I love this. These are great illustrations. So discipline and self-control and team working, having each other's back, things that they naturally are trained in. It becomes natural because they've been trained in it.
That's
and
right.
It just illustrates for us the rigor sometimes we may need in our faith, but also thinking about the big picture. Like it's not just about me, it's about having somebody else's back. That's that sort of thing. I love
Let me
that.
give just one more little thing. Soldiers are trained to obey and obey quickly. So if I were in a group and I said, get down, if you were in a group of military, they would hit the deck in a second. If I were in a group of civilians and I said that, they would look at me and say, why? Well, if someone were coming in with a gun, they would be dead because they asked why. You understand? And I've literally seen this happen multiple times when somebody says something, just say it, and people respond. The soldier will respond quickly. That's how it should be about God. When God says something to us, we should respond quickly and obediently and with faith, and not question why. What am I going to get out of this? Why do you want me to do this? Just do it.
Say, in your book, Gateway to Iraq, do you have a favorite story of working at the Gateway base?
Yes, a whole bunch of them. All of these.
The whole book's worth. We need to read the whole book, but which is your favorite one?
Well, I really worked on this for you, but let me just tell you a little bit about the book. It is 24 chapters. It starts at 1 o'clock in the morning and goes to midnight, 2400. And they are at least 24 short stories of America's finest, the American military. And so I'm going to read you another poem because this sort of encapsulates what I did as a chaplain. And that what was so meaningful to me was to be able to help somebody that was really hurting and was really in trouble. And that happened quite a lot. So this poem is called He Waits. He stands in humble silence and waits for my permission to invite him in and sit a spell, to quiet myself and listen. I wait for him to tell me what this is all about. He waits to see if I'm listening before he will let it out. I wait to hear his story before there's an answer to seek. He waits to see if I'm hearing. Then he begins to weep. It washes us down a spiraling hole, spinning and twirling and falling. It washes us down a spiraling hole where the darkness is appalling. We wait on God to speak to us, to hear his counsel wise. We wait to hear God speak to us, to see it through his eyes. God waits till we are listening before he gives direction. He waits till we can see him. His help is our selection. He waits, for he is frightened. He waits, for he is scared. He waits, and I wait with him. And God waits in sacred still.
I'd like to take a moment to present one more idea for your small group or adult Sunday school class. Do you ever have a week where everything falls apart? Maybe your teacher is sick, or you forgot to schedule a lesson, or perhaps there's a 1 week gap you must fill before the next lesson series. What you need is a quickly available, easy to teach lesson, and I've got that for you. Visit the free content page on ceciltaylorministries.com for my set of emergency lessons. There's a video lesson you can stream or download, and there's a lesson that doesn't require video. In both cases, the Leader's Guide makes everything easy for you. If you can, while you're listening, open up a browser window and navigate to ceciltaylorministries.com. Click on the free content entry near the top of the page and take a look at all the freebies I have to offer. Rachel Coggins is with me on the Practical Faith Academy podcast, and this idea of you bringing God into these military situations, into this stress, it is also parallel to things you've done afterward. Volunteerism is a very big part of your life. You just recently came back from Africa. You have work with the Les Amis Operation Lift Up that assists African women. And do you see volunteerism as an important element of Christianity and faith?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a scripture for you as well. There's yet opportunity. Let us do good, especially to the household of faith. So, and it certainly resolves with purpose. You know, I am retired and I am of the retirement age. So I could, my friends are going on cruises and maybe playing bingo or whatever, but I want to live purposefully. I want to do something that's meaningful, that makes a difference. I love a good project. I love to be working on something. It gives me, and it was so purposeful being in Africa. Just a little bit of money can mean so much, and that's what I'm doing. In fact, the selling of my books will help fund some of these projects. For example, I have a board of ladies, African ladies. I've set that up, and they are finding me projects so that women will talk to the women and tell them what they need quicker than they will tell the men. So they're coming up with all kind of projects, and school supplies is a big need. So this one little school, the teacher told them they don't have one school supply that is critical for them to go to school. Would you like to guess what that one school supply is?
Well, I tend to start to think of paper and pencil to get really basic, but
You're
what is it?
close.
Yeah.
You're close. But it's not pencil or paper. It's a little chalkboard, the
Oh,
old-fashioned slate that's about a square foot, and a piece of chalk.
how about
So
that?
some of these children did not have this little slate. It cost 33 cents to give them a slate. So we were able to buy 1,000 of them and give them out at 3 different schools so that everybody had a brand new slate. And I've seen some of these slates. They were horrid, just, so old and marked up. But everybody got a new slate and a piece of chalk. And it was
There's
just such a blessing, to be a part of that. They were so sweet and so appreciative of it. And that's just one of many things that we've done there.
what a great analogy of a clean slate being given to these school children. I love that. Last night I myself was at a dinner. I do some things involving helping homeless people who need shelter during cold weather, and there's a group of volunteers that met for an annual meeting and dinner. And what was wonderful and inspiring was to have 165 like-minded people across denominations, Protestant, Catholic, across religions, from a Muslim mosque, all there working together out of love for people. And it gives you hope. You think the world is so crazy, but people are still doing great things, and we have
Yes.
to keep that lovely thought in mind, that we can give clean slates to a lot of people, right?
Yeah, or we can write on their slate. How about that?
We can write on their slate. Yeah, we can make an impact with what we write.
Yes, for
Uh,
sure.
Rachel, what do you find is the hardest part about putting faith into practice?
I think just resting in God. Like I said, I love to do a project, and I know a lot of people do. We get very involved in doing, um, and the sometimes you just have to be quiet, be still, and know that I am God. And being able to change your plans on a moment's notice, or change what you thought you were doing, and come up, do what something else that God has in mind for you.
Yeah, obey right away. We covered that, right? What's,
Exactly.
so what is your best tip for our listeners for developing and maintaining a 7-day practical faith?
Do the disciplines of an army. Do what the military disciplines. Yeah, I would say the disciplines. There's a lovely story. It's by a general that was asked that, and it was a speech, and the title of it is "Make Your Bed." Do you know this story?
Yes, I've heard this, but go ahead.
Well, he writes this lovely story about start your day off by making your bed, and just the discipline of making your bed. And he said then, and it goes on and on. It's a beautiful read. If anybody wants to look that up, it's a lovely story. He says, no matter what happens to you that day, no matter how bad it was, no matter how good it was, when you come home at night, you are coming to sheets that are clean and straight and a made up bed. And so it's simple disciplines sometimes, just simple disciplines that make a world of difference. God's not going to drop you. God's is not going to drop you. So maintain your faith if you're having a crisis at the moment. I heard a good illustration this weekend from our pastor, and he said, God allows tests, and he said when a teacher gives a test, they're very quiet, but they're there. They're not absent. So the same with us. God gives us tests, and it's the wonderful scriptures about that's how we develop. Let's see, in 2 Peter it says, add goodness and knowledge, self-control. From self-control you get perseverance, godliness, mutual affection, and then love. So it builds. The more you don't just have faith. Well, I mean, you do have faith one day, but it's tested, and it grows.
So, Rachel, it's been a delight to have you here. I want you to tell the listeners more about finding your Gateway to Iraq book. And then you have a new book coming out about Turkey's connection to the Bible, which sounds really interesting. Could you share about those books and then how people can find them?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I have a launch day of 10/10/25. So this Friday is my launch date, and it's called Exploring Turkey's Biblical Heritage by Rachel Coggins. And you can find it on Amazon in hardback or Kendall. And this was a lovely story. My husband was assigned to Incirlik, Turkey. Incirlik, Turkey is just an hour away from Tarsus, which is the birthplace of Paul. So people think of when you're going to biblical holy sites, you think about going to Israel, and of course that's true. But Turkey has the second most. It is the land of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They lived in Haran. I was able to go there. It is possibly the home place of the Garden of Eden, the landing of Noah's Ark, the birthplace of Paul. Paul did all his journeys there, the 7 churches of Revelation, the city of Ephesus, as in the book of Ephesians, the area of Galatia, as in the book of Galatians. Timothy is from there. It just goes on and on. So we were able to visit those sites, and I took copious notes. I was working on my doctoral degree, so I was writing papers and researching and studying it. And I've spent the last 2 years editing my papers and putting it in what I hope is a very readable book to show you where these places are, to remind you what literally happened there, and the biblical stories that happened there, and what I'm seeing today, and some of the why did Turkey, the home of St. Paul, become a Muslim world? I've got some answers in there. It's all very interesting. I loved working on it again. It's good stuff.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Such a wealth of knowledge and experience that you bring from both the military and outside, and really appreciate you sharing it with us today.
Thank you so much, Cecil. I love being on your show. This was fun.
Rachel and I had such a fascinating conversation when we first discussed this topic at the convention I mentioned, but this podcast was even better. As a podcast listener, I urge you to go back and listen to my prior podcasts. The next podcast will be number 70, and I've talked with a lot of interesting guests like Rachel Coggins along the way. Check out the list of podcasts and find one you like. Next up on the Practical Faith Academy podcast in the second half of October is another guest that has a unique angle. Professional photographer Pat Mingarelli connects with God through nature photography. He offers a daily devotional that ties a beautiful nature picture together with scripture and a message. Mingarelli has written a similar devotional book and even offers an online course. If you've ever said that you sense God through nature and creation, you want to hear what Mingarelli has to share. I'd appreciate it if you connected with my ministry. Follow Cecil Taylor Ministries on Facebook, Instagram, or Pinterest, but be sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletters. Read about them in the show notes and how you can receive them. Until next time, remember, God sends you into the world every day.